Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. My name's Danny. I'm an Audi brand specialist here at Audi Oakville. Today we're going to be reviewing the Q5 and the Q3 and their main differences. Let's get into it. All right, so the Q3 and the Q5, they get compared all the time. It's almost every day in the showroom I find myself going over the differences between these two cars. So we're gonna start on the outside of the Q5 and work our way to the inside. So we're starting at the front of the 2021 Audi Q5. This car has got a few changes to the front of it, mainly this honeycomb grille, which is inspired from the R8. It's also part of the S-Line Sport package, which now comes standard when you move to the mid-level trim, or the progressive, of the Q5. Moving over to the Q3, you also get the S-Line Sport Package appearance as a standard feature when you go to the progressive trim level. It's slightly different though. You don't get the honeycomb grille on the Q3. You get the standard Audi vertical lines, which is of course what started on the first Audi Quattro, which of course labeled all of our all-wheel drive vehicles. We're gonna make our way around to the back. So here we are at the back of the Q3. The first thing I wanted to point out was these really nice LEDs that come standard, even on the base model of the Q3. Part of these LEDs is the new Audi design language, which started in 2019 when this car was redone. As well, you're gonna get that S-Line Sport Package rear bumper as a standard feature when you go to the progressive trim level of the vehicle. So it really adds a nice styling element. One of the key things, which we'll come back to, is this sloped rear end. Again, kind of that new Audi design language, very much so inspired by the Audi Q8, which is of course our flagship SUV. A quick note on the wheels, this one is a progressive that doesn't have any packages on it. So you've also got the standard 19-inch wheel. Looks really good, but if you prefer something that's got a little bit more pizzazz to it, we can upgrade that to be a 19-inch sport wheel, which is a little bit darker in color and can provide a little bit more character to your Audi. So moving on to the Q5 rear end, we've got these same LED lights, which I pointed out on the Q3. It was just redone in 2021, so it really does tie in that new Audi design language, which we were talking about, that all comes from the Q8 and the Q3. This silver strip that runs across the back is a new standard feature as well, which ties in that design language. And then we've got this little funky air inlet at the bottom, which doesn't do very much to be honest, but it does tie in the S-Line styling. The biggest change to the Q5 progressive, in my opinion at least, is the new wheels. They've upgraded the wheel to look, and again, this is just my opinion, a lot nicer. It's really a better finish on the car, and it provides a little bit more character to your Q5. If you did want to upgrade those wheels, same thing as the Q3, we can add a little bit more personality and also upgrade to a 20-inch by going to the S-Line Sport Package. We're going to go over a few more differences on the interior of the car. One of my other favorite features of the Q5 is the sliding rear bench. So you can move this forward to gain a little bit of extra space in the trunk. So as you can see, you have about 5-6 inches of space at the back here, where if you need to have 5 passengers in the car or use your second row, but then also have the maximum space in the trunk, you've got a creative solution in order to do that. All right, so one of my favorite features of the Q5 is the kick to open trunk. The Q3 has this as well. It's just a handy thing to show. Also, at the back of the Q5, we've got these really handy quick release handles. So what I mean by that, you can fold the seats down in a jiff. So you're at the back with your kids, you need to load stuff in, quick release, you're done. So sitting in the back of the Q5, you've got ample legroom. I've adjusted this seat, well, the driver's seat, to be around where I would want it if I was a comfortable driving position. As you can see, I'm about 6 foot tall, more than comfortable in the back. The Q3 is actually quite similar. We'll visit that next. Okay, so in the Q3, I've adjusted again the passenger seat to be in a comfortable position. As you can see, lots of legroom in the back. My headroom is slightly compromised, but going back to that Q8 styling on the Q3 of the sloped rear end, a little bit less practicality, but it does look incredible. On the interior of the Q5, I've got a couple things that I want to go over. Firstly, when you're looking at the navigation system, the virtual cockpit in the Q5 is really one of the key selling features, and it's been upgraded for 2021 to also include live traffic updates. So for example, the QEW moving towards Toronto is actually quite good. Coming back from Toronto, heading towards Hamilton is a little jammed up at the moment. Shifting our attention to the center touchscreen, you're going to have apps here just like you normally would on your smartphone, and you can configure these to be a bunch of different, well, for lack of a better term, configurations. And it's also been upgraded with the new touchscreen in 2021. We've got this same setup in the Q3. It's just in a slightly different position. One of the things that's a little different about the Q5 is your gear shifter. Everything is electronic, which can be slightly, different when you're comparing it to most cars. To get the car into gear, you've got this little button here on the side. You're going to pull that straight back, and you can see drive has been selected in 2 places on the center console, and then also in that virtual cockpit, which is really going to be your focal point of attention as you're driving. To get it back into park, you just give that a quick click, and you're all settled. All right, so here at the back of the Q3, we've got the same kick to open trunk, which is quite nice. And then the main thing that I keep on coming back to on this car, the slope of the rear end looks incredible. It does limit you a little bit in the height, so it's just going to be a personal preference thing for your situation. If you feel like you're carrying people and stuff, the Q5 could be the right fit for you. If you're just carrying 1 or 2 passengers and you need a lot more room, I'll show you how much space we can have in the back of the Q3 and the Q5. I think you're going to be surprised. So on the interior of the Q3, it is going to be fairly similar. Their climate control bar is going to be a little bit different, and the gear shifter is also a little bit more intuitive. You move it where you'd like it to go rather than having the buttons and the electronic shifter, so that's a little bit easier to use. Overall, this one does have the navigation package, so you get the larger screen. Normally the Q3 is going to be slightly smaller, but as you can see, the screen here is brought a little bit lower, which is the new Audi design language. Going back to that Q8, everything is going to revolve around this design language going forward. Navigation package also gets you the behind steering wheel driver information cockpit, which is going to have your maps, very similar to the Q5. Ultimately, these cars are very similar overall and direct competitors with one another, but there are some key differences. We're going to review those now. Okay, so to recap these 2 cars, we've got different front ends, we've got different wheel choices between the 2 as well. You're gonna have a little bit of styling preference between the rear end of the vehicle in terms of how much slope you have on your trunk, which again can factor into practicality, but is really gonna be a styling preference and how much space you're gonna need for the back of the car. The major differences on the interiors is going to be the positioning of the screen. Of course, the Q3 a little bit more ingrained into the dash, whereas the Q5 sticks up a bit. And then, of course, the gear shifter. We're going to have the analog, a little bit more intuitive gear shifter in comparison to the electronic one in the Q5. Okay, so that's the conclusion. We've got 2 very similar cars, but also 2 very different cars. One designed more for 1 or 2 individuals, one designed that the whole family can come along. Ultimately, I thank you for joining me as we review these 2 vehicles, and I look forward to you joining me on my next comparison.